Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle Animation Analysis video. And I can tell you that this was certainly not the LR unit that I expected to be doing an animation analysis video on. But here we are. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Carnival LR STR. Technically it's the Z Fighters, but unfortunately the card is actually just called Super Saiyan Goku, even though it has all of the Z Fighters on it. I'm trying to find the card art. There we go. Even though it has all of them on it, it is just called Super Saiyan Goku. However, this is going to be JP's Christmas LR, and interestingly enough, this card comes from the fight against Hachiyak. So it's kind of strange that for Yamcha's celebration, the Part 2 isn't a Yamcha-related Part 2 LR. It's related to the Battlefield LR, which is Hachiyak. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's just a very strange choice, to be honest with you. But I mean, I'm down for it for sure. I think it's definitely a lot more unique of a card than what we would have gotten. However, it's also not a unique card because it's a Super Saiyan Goku, and they could have called it like Super Saiyan Goku parentheses Z Fighters or something like that. But this is the card that we got. So of course, as per usual, we're going to take a look at the animations one time through, and then we're going to go through the frame by frame. Unfortunately, I do not have all of the animations on hand to compare this to, as I am doing this video literally, you know, the night that it drops and then uploading it the next day. However, I was able to find the clip on YouTube of the actual active skill, at least. So we will have that to compare to. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at these full animations. Now, I will say a couple of very interesting things about this LR. For one, they only have 2 super attacks and an active skill, which is interesting because I can't really remember the last time that we got an LR that was that simplistic, considering the fact that obviously nowadays, you know, we have active skills and intros and, you know, exchanges and, you know, all counters and all this wacky stuff, you know, they implement a lot of. So it's very interesting to me that this unit is so simple. Like, this is a really short video. Like, this is only 1 minute and 1 second, which is crazy considering most of the modern day units that we get released, their videos are like double or even triple that sometimes, right? Depending on how many of the attacks there are. I will tell you as well, right from the get-go, I think that the super attack animations are kind of they're just alright, to be honest with you, but this active skill, oh, let's just say I can't wait to talk about the active skill. Something related to the active skill is definitely in the title of this video, for sure, so I'm so excited to take a look at these actually. So let's go ahead and jump into this here. So we start off with our 12 key super attack here. This is a pretty cool opening shot with all of the Z Fighters standing here, getting ready to attack Hachiyak with everybody flying away. I think that the key looks nice there. That is a really quick introduction to the card art there. Holy cow, okay. So the card art disappears and we have Gohan immediately on the screen. I gotta say, before we even talk about the animation here, one thing that I really like and is definitely pretty consistent with this throughout, and I think is definitely represented pretty well here by Gohan, is that the style of these essays in terms of the, I don't want to say the aesthetic because that sounds like, ooh, the aesthetic, but like the animation style and the color choice for all of these animations is very close to the original source material. They did a very good job sort of capturing the likeness of the original Hachiyak special from the game in the style and the color scheme for these animations, which I think is really good. Which it's kind of like a washed out sort of like darker tones, which I mean, yeah, pretty much perfectly encapsulated here. So we have Gohan charge forward, a little bit of nice movement on the hair. I will say the actual like asset itself looks really interesting to me. I feel like I have not seen an asset that is this high quality with this thick of black lines in a while, or maybe even ever, to be honest with you, because typically when these assets are like this simplistic in their shading and they don't have a lot of detail and they have these thicker black lines, typically they're a lot more low quality. Sometimes they end up being like, you know, sort of in between story assets and stuff like that. But this Gohan actually looks really good for how simplistic this is. Though it does make me think that maybe this unit was a little bit older, because it kind of almost gives me that feel. And that is something that a lot of people were commenting, that they wonder if they were holding on to these animations for a little bit, because at least for the super attacks, they do feel a little bit old. Anyway, let's keep looking at Gohan here. So obviously we have his arms move. Very interesting that they just cut from the gray to the blue. I will say that is definitely a little bit of a jarring cut there for sure. But we have Gohan's leg sweep down there. Let's actually talk about this. So it is a little bit of a... Actually, no fade at all. Wow, okay. They just kind of bend his leg like that. I think it looks good in full motion, right? Definitely not too bad for sure. I love these anime speed lines that they do for this too. This is actually a really cool transition as well, because what this transitions to is this is supposed to be Gohan's foot kicking across the screen, because you can see the brown of his shoe and the purple of his leg there, obviously sweeping past the camera, which is a very nice transition and just a very nice angle there for sure. Although I will say it is kind of weird that like it doesn't make contact with anything, because then obviously you see Gohan's just kicking down here. I guess it's just he's readying his foot to get into position, into a rider kick basically. He hits the enemy here, and you can see that this is basically just a static PNG, right? Until the very end here, you can see then Gohan gets a little bit of movement on his arms and his hair with the blue background present there. It's just very simplistic. Like, it reminds me a lot of the older Dokkan LRs. Like, there's certainly some elements of some new stuff, even in just this section, right? But it definitely feels like an older animation, for sure. We move on to the boy Piccolo coming towards this, even though this does have a little bit of movement here, right? Like, Piccolo's head does tilt a little bit here. I think his arms also tilt like a tiny bit here. It still kind of just looks like a PNG that's sliding forward towards the camera, if I'm being 100% honest with you. Like, that's basically the look that I get with that beginning part. However, obviously, Piccolo does then stance up, which is pretty cool. The gray background as well supporting behind, and we have a very quick zoom into Piccolo's face here. It's interesting that for Piccolo, by the way, they keep the gray background for this section, right? Whereas for Gohan, they went from the gray background with him zooming forward, right, to then the blue here, which I just think is something interesting to point out. Then we have Piccolo punch forward, which I think this punch is not too bad. But, ooh, mama, that is an old asset. Oh, baby, that is a ancient asset if I have ever seen one. And, again, this is basically just Piccolo standing here, right? There is a little bit of movement, it looks like, on his arm, but this, like, style of asset is just a very old one. This looks like a very old story asset that was repurposed. And I don't think it is. I'm sure that it is original for this animation, but that's just kind of the, you know, feel that I get from the look of it, right? So we have the enemy get hit away, which is unfortunately a very yucky close-up to the sprite, but thankfully the boy Trunks comes in to kick the ugly sprite in the face. You'll love to see it. It's also kind of weird that he's so close to kicking, and then they kind of back up and now have him come down to the kick. It's just a little bit of weird continuity there for sure. But obviously the blue background is well present for Trunks. We have a pretty nice effect actually as Trunks' kick lays into the enemy. But again, this is just a static PNG with no movement. Even here at the end, there isn't any follow through like Gohan had. There's a little bit of hair movement there, which is nice. But Trunks' arms and legs do not move whatsoever here, which is just kind of weird, if I'm being honest with you. It's just a little bit weird. Maybe his arms do move a smidge. It kind of looks like that they tilt like just the tiniest bit, but it's kind of negligible. Like, this basically just looks like a sliding PNG, right? It is also interesting that they transition from Gohan to Piccolo with just like the blue background is there, and then bam, they're at Piccolo like that, right? And then they have a like not proper transition, but like in sort of in between the anime speed lines when Piccolo hits him away, right? And then they transition to Trunks coming in, and then they do the same thing to go to Vegeta, where Vegeta is literally just like, and I'm here too, you know? I don't know, kind of just interesting to point out that they structured it that way. But obviously we cut to Vegeta, and Vegeta basically has his little moment to shine where he's sliding forward. Again, basically just a static PNG here. He does have a little bit of hair movement here at the end and a little bit of arm movement, but again, in the beginning, not much movement on this one. Right, we have him fly past the screen, which again, this is just the same PNG, right, flying upward. You can see that they sort of not masked it, but they kind of give you like the feeling that he's actually moving by having him passing past the screen like that, right? But it's still a little bit like, ooh, you can tell. And then I will say, background here, fantastic, absolutely, love the background for this one. Ooh boy. That is kind of yucky, if I'm being honest with you. So we have the enemy fall down. Vegeta comes into the frame with a sprite. Ballerina bingo dance looking boy right here. And then we have a hard cut to this pose right here. And hard cut to another pose until he finally transitions into the last one, where they actually do have a little bit of minimal movement on his legs there as he gets into position. And then just another quick cut into him readying the blast, which is interesting because you can see that the color is sort of the same throughout for Vegeta here. But then they instantly cut to the shading that they're going to use for the like key blasts, rather than having it sort of fade in like they've done for a lot of modern animations, where the character is in position and then the color changes to reflect the key blast coming out of their hand. They just do it immediately, which is kind of lazy, to be honest with you, especially compared to what we've seen a lot recently. But then we have a little smoke explosion, and Vegeta again just changes positions pretty rapidly there, going from pose to pose. Then we have Goku come through. Hair moving a little bit, arms moving a little bit. He just basically flies towards the camera. That punch is pretty good. I like the little anime speed lines that they have for that. A little motion blur on that. And he breaks into the wall with these rocks flying away and the smoke cloud. Yeah, this animation feels really old. Like, this feels like, especially this section with Vegeta, just feels like a really old animation here. This definitely is not up to snuff. And I think one thing that is really interesting to think about, and I know this may be ironic coming from me, considering the fact that I talked about that I was still disappointed with the Carnival Goku and Vegeta, and I still am, right? Or not the Carnival Goku and Vegeta, the Dokkan Fest Goku and Vegeta, rather. And I guess, you know, Carnival Goku and Carnival Metal Cooler to that extent. But I will say, in terms of the super attacks, I know we still have to look at the 18 key, but those supers were miles better than these are. And you're telling me that these are supposed to be on the same tier? Metal Cooler and the Super Saiyan Goku are on the same tier of animations as these? Right? Like, I still don't think that those animations were as good as they could have been. But these are by far so much worse. And I understand that those were for like a big celebration. But with the technicality, this has the same Carnival logo on it. It's the same type of LR. So it's just so interesting to me that the animations are this lackluster comparatively so. So now we have Goku pop up on the screen. I gotta say, his face definitely looks a little bit funny throughout this whole thing. However, this is not an LR. This is not an LR Bobo. This is not a L of the animation. I know for a fact this is because they were just basing it off of what the original source material looked like, and the original OVA for Hachiak just looked a little bit wonky in some areas. So that's why Goku looks like that. I'm not going to say that that's the animation's L. But yeah, his face obviously contorting a little bit. I will say, though, the way that he transitions into this screaming face is definitely very awkward. It is basically a frame by frame until they get into the final shot here. Like, it's just kind of weird. It doesn't really flow that well. Like, funny enough, I think this might have almost been a good opportunity for them to use the fade. I always talk about in my videos that I hate when they do the fading between assets, but this might have been a better place for it. To kind of just have it be like to rise up to the final pose. It just feels a little bit choppy even in full motion. You know, just having it basically go frame by frame. But when Goku's shouting, it looks pretty decent, and I do really, really like. It's super quick there, unfortunately. But yeah, this, right? I really like that his hair actually begins to spike up a little bit. And you can see, this is what I was talking about where Vegeta, you know, the color just changes immediately to reflect the color of the, or I guess you'd say the light coming off of the Ki Blast, right? I think I need a drink of water. Hold on. Hydrate or dihydrate, baby. Don't forget to drink water while watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, so yeah, hair spikes up, and obviously we have the color fade in to this. It's kind of a shame that they don't linger on this shot a little bit longer, because I think this shot is pretty decent, but they immediately cut to this, which does look pretty good. This actually looks very anime accurate, if I'm being honest with you. Like, this specific shot, like, this looks like when anime characters are a little bit more far away. This looks pretty much exactly how I would expect, so definitely not too bad. Really like this impact frame, actually. That is super cool with the Ki Blast, or the Ki Aura, rather, excuse me, then appearing right there. And the Aura looks good. Goku's movement looks pretty decent. Gohan here looks a little bit janky, but again, I'm going to leave that up to the OVA and not the animation itself, because obviously Dokkan tries to be as accurate as possible to the original animations. We have Gohan powering up here. We have Piccolo powering up here. He looks pretty good. Trunks powering up here also looks pretty decent. And we have Vegeta powering up here. I will say, the one thing I will comment on all of these, and again, I think this is more so the animation of the movie, is that they all do feel very static. I feel like there's not a lot of, like, oomph to these power-ups, you know? They're just kind of there. They just kind of happen. But I'm pretty sure that, again, that's the movies, L, and not the animations. So, we have Goku pull back into a Kamehameha here, and I do have to say, this is extremely choppy after Vegeta. This is actually a very nice shot of Vegeta, I'm not going to lie. But, this shot of Goku here, first of all, his arms look fine here, but I will say, as soon as they transition into this, I feel like they look a little scrawny. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like they look a little bit too thin. Regardless, though, yeah, this is basically like just a frame by frame with the pose change here, right? Like, this to this is fine, because Goku always just, you know, a little, like, a little shimmy to stance up for it. But I just feel like with these, they could have added a lot more frames in between for him squatting down from the Kamehameha. Especially this to this feels really awkward to me. It just kind of feels awkward overall, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, this part, I will say, is really cool. One thing that I gotta say about this is that even though this section of the animation, in my opinion, doesn't really look that crazy good, because it is quite literally just the characters' PNGs being moved around with their ki being around them, right? Like, I don't really think that it looks as good as it could. All the characters could have individual movements to them, rather than just keeping the PNG sliding and zooming in on it. It is very cool seeing all of these characters in the same animation. Like, I definitely can't knock that, because in any Dokkan card where we have just a bunch of characters pulling up, like, you know, the Team Universe 7, it's just always so sick seeing all of these characters in the same animation, because obviously these animations, or these cards rather, where we have just like 5 characters are just always so wacky and just so much fun, even if the animations aren't really that crazy good. But yeah, we have Vegeta come up to punch the Funny Man. Again, another very, it's weird, right? Because this asset looks pretty high quality, to be honest with you. Like, it looks like it's in HD. However, again, this is sort of styled like an older story event asset, or like one of the ones that's like an in-between asset for when they're talking. It's kind of weird that they chose to do that, because they don't really do that for big LRs as much anymore. There is a little bit of minimal movement on him, though, which is nice to see. You can see he actually does wind up for the punch a little bit, right? You can see his arm actually does cock back, which is nice. And this punch actually does follow through quite nicely. You have an impact frame here, and then the nice speed lines on it, the motion blur with a little bit of an explosion effect. You have the enemy fly away, and the boys teleport in. I will say, the teleport isn't crazy good. It's okay. It's definitely not the best one in Dokkan that I've ever seen. However, I do like that they actually give you the colors of the character there, right? Like, you can clearly see that this is the same colors as Trunks' outfit, right, when he's teleporting in, and even kind of the same as Gohan, right? Just sort of the darker colors here and the lighter ones there, right? You can tell, which is pretty cool, right? I definitely like that they include that detail. This section, I'm not going to lie, even though it is pretty cool, there is a lot of jump cuts here, right? So you can see Gohan changes very quickly, and also his head is so big, and the perspective that Gohan is at here is completely different from what he's at here. It's quite weird, if I'm being honest with you. Also, Gohan is layered over the enemy here, which may be a mistake, I'm not sure. But this section of them punching, I do like the effect that they do with the background, right? Where they sort of have them moving through the pipes. I think that that is really cool. However, this is just very static motion, and these punches do not feel like they have a lot of impact as well. The effects do not match up whatsoever. They're going way too fast for how they're punching and kicking the enemy. It's just very strange, this whole sequence. It kind of reminds me, this might be a little bit of a sad comparison, but it kind of reminds me of the Dragon Ball Heroes promotional anime, when you have those sort of in-between scenes where the characters are just punching at each other rapidly. That's kind of what this reminds me of, to be honest with you. We do have Piccolo come in, and I do have to say, this is probably the best part of this super attack so far. This is definitely like, I think this part clears anything that's in the 12 key, if I'm being honest with you. This section of Piccolo coming through is awesome. So we have some very, very nice shading on him. You have him actually change poses here, which I think this rapid pose change works for the beginning of this. You have him fly forward super quickly, very nice electricity effects in his palm. And you have Piccolo turn here and open his hand. I do wish that there was a little bit of a different, like, motion here. He does change his hand and his leg a little bit, and obviously with him moving his hand forward, he gets a little bit more light on his face, which is well done because, again, at least it's actually right in front of him when it's supposed to be, and this section isn't lit up incorrectly. And obviously Piccolo's face looks a little bit different here. But this section is very cool, and again, the lighting on Piccolo and the shading is just so good. So accurate to the original source material, which is awesome. The flash of white, which transitions into this, and again, like, you can see it's very high quality assets, but it's just these ones that look like these sort of lower story event assets. It's also weird, like the way that this whole scene is set up just feels a little bit awkward, to be honest with you. But Piccolo obviously blasts, and the blast doesn't even look that crazy, to be honest with you. It looks like an older blast effect for Dokkan, to be honest with you. But they do try and do the thing where the character sort of, I guess, absorbed into the key, I guess you would say. But it is at least good that they sort of fade it in, right? Because you can see he's in like full color as he's getting blasted. But then they sort of cast the shadow on him as the key is sort of trying to flow over him. It's just weird that he doesn't get completely enveloped, or he's just kind of still visible. And like also the fact that he's pulsating, I understand it's trying to be like the key is overwhelming him. But it's still a little bit strange for sure. We cut back to Goku doing the Kamehameha. And I definitely don't really have any complaints on the actual, like, wind-up. And even this section, honestly, looks pretty good, if I'm being honest with you. I think this section is probably, you know, one of the better parts of this essay. This section right here, where he's charging the Kamehameha for the beginning section, it's okay. Like, it's just pretty basic, to be honest with you. It's nothing crazy. This is a very cool angle, I will say, albeit kind of static feeling. Like, it feels very like you're stuck in place. Because I think it's just because it's like tilting on the same frame, essentially. Not like the same frame, but you know what I mean. Like the same pose, and obviously stuff is moving around it, so it's not paused. But you understand what I'm trying to say. Menacing text, by the way. And I do like this, actually, where Goku is kind of screaming here. And it's interesting because they do have this rapid pose change with Goku. It's weird because you have this expression, right, where it pans up to him, but they have this, like, shake on the screen, and you can see it's a little bit of a turn. It's a little bit of a different angle, right? And then they have this sort of big shake again, right? Goku's mouth does look a little bit too large, if I'm being honest with you. But they have this big shake here again. It's going to happen in a second, I promise. It's so weird that they go so far out, too. There we go, right? It shakes again, and then you're kind of at this angle. It's weird because it is just like switching it up super quickly like that. Like, you would think that this pose change should not look as good, but I think it's just because they have these, like, boom effects I think it kind of masks it, excuse me, makes it work really well. This section is pretty cool. The style of this is very interesting to me. Like, this almost feels like Buchigiri match with the way that this looks. Like, the way that it's shaded and the just, like, look of it, the consistency of the black lines of the outline kind of reminds me of Buchigiri a lot. Also weird that the Kamehameha is outside of his hands, right? They do this a lot for animations that sometimes don't age as well. Ones that I feel like a little bit lesser animations where Kamehameha isn't layered properly. Like, obviously this hand should be over it, right? Not under it. But I know that they do that because obviously it's going to change so quickly to this that most people probably wouldn't notice it anyway. But even so, like, his fingers should still be over it there, right? Or at least, like, above it. But this does look pretty cool, right? I definitely like the style of this a lot. And obviously it backs up. And even though it is just a PNG, I think it works fine for this. And I do like the blue sort of anime lines in the background. I think those do work well. The Kamehameha also looks really good. And it looks good here too. And obviously it blasts into the enemy. And you have this very nice explosion, actually, by the way. I do really like can't forget to mention this, the little like gleam effect right there. The little rainbow. Swing! That's pretty sick. Definitely very cool that they can do that with PNGs. And you actually see the Kamehameha beam fly out and dissipate, which is very nice. I like that a lot for sure. So yeah, definitely the 18 key has some stuff that's a lot nicer than the 12 key. But I think overall it still feels kind of old. Excuse me, hydrate or dihydrate with a lot of the aspects of it. But we get to the active skill, ladies and gentlemen. They popped off. They popped off hard, bro. First of all, very nice shot of Goku in the beginning here. Obviously, putting his hands together, right? The key looks good. The lighting looks good. The aura looks good, right? What I meant to say by the key was this part of the key looks really cool. It's kind of weird that it forms right here, but I guess that is kind of in between his hands right there. This is really nice with this little light beam sort of beginning to form the Kamehameha. I will say, it is a little bit weird that his face transitions so quickly like this. Like, this is literally one frame. And I don't think I would have as much of a problem with this if it wasn't for the entire colors changing, right? Like, look at the orange colors here, and now look how washed out they are comparatively. So it looks like someone turned down the saturation on this real quick. So it's just kind of weird that it immediately goes from that to that. However, once we're in this section, oh, baby. Goku's face looks really good here. I love the expression. The effects on the Kamehameha are so good. Look at the effects on this, bro. I need to let this play so you can see it. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. So cool, dude. And then the next section, the rotoscoping is crazy. If you're unfamiliar, rotoscoping is when they take 2D assets and 2D images and make it look like it's in 3D. Bro, this straight up looks like a 3D model in the way that that looks. I am blown away. What happened to this unit, bro? Why was the budget so high for the active skill and the essays were so stinky? I don't understand. The first couple seconds of this, like, just blow away everything from the super attacks. It's so crazy. So this rotoscoping looks really good. The colors here are perfect. This basically looks like it was ripped right out of the anime, to be honest with you. Even the background, the way the background moves just looks so perfect. The way that the background is drawn looks like it's just ripped right out of the anime. It looks amazing. It's so good. I'm going to watch this section on loop after this video like 1,000,000 times, I promise you. But yeah, then we pose, right? Or I guess I should say we pause, right, in the camera's movement to now go sort of behind Goku here. And he obviously moves his hands forward. It's kind of hard to see because obviously the Kamehameha is moving forward. And immediately he whips his hands forward, which is really cool, right? Definitely like this. I like how the Kamehameha is also a little bit more white, which again I believe is accurate to the source material. Which again, we'll sort of take a look at that in a second here because we actually do have it here. As you can see, right? Let's go forward a little bit. I don't want to get copyright claims, so I'm going to have to just skip through the video a little bit. But yeah, Goku's expression is like spot on here for what they had it. And again, the lighting effects that they had on the Kamehameha are spot on. They absolutely nailed it 100%. I don't know if I can find that shot with a little bit of rotoscoping there. I do kind of wish, I will say, it is a little bit of a shame that they didn't do this for it, because I think this would have been really cool, right? With him bringing his hands forward with this angle. But I still really like this. And maybe that is kind of what they were trying to do with this. But obviously it is a little bit different for sure. Love these effects of the impact frames in between here, sort of representing the Kamehameha firing off and then everything being coated in blue. That is really cool. And that is quite literally what they do here, right? Before the Kamehameha, they have these impact frames when he lifts his hands up and then it turns blue. That's awesome. Literally perfect to the source material, right? This looks so good with the Kamehameha beam, bro. The beam. This is how you do a ki blast effect, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I always talk about in animation analysis videos, where there's these essays where it's like, and it's just like blue line that grows bigger and smaller. This is a Kamehameha, ladies and gentlemen. That is what Dokkan animation should strive to look like. Look at how good that looks. Oh man, the smoke effects in the rock, needless to say, also look fantastic. I really like too how they also color his aura blue, which, I mean, you know, literally accurate to the source material. You know, makes sense. Then we transition to Vegeta here. I will say the beginning is a little bit weird because like the way that the ki blast forms in his hand does look a little bit strange. However, again, for some reason this art style like heavily reminds me of Buchigiri Match in terms of like the card art. But yeah, the ki forms in his hand. I love the ki here too. Oh my gosh, the ki looks so cool. The ki, the way that it forms in his hand, again, it like feels like actual energy rather than just, ooh, funny little circle, you know? Looks so cool. I will say, it is a bit of a shame as well that the ki, even though the ki does look really good, it is a bit of a shame that this animation is kind of covered up by the ki. Because this looks really good, even though there is a quick frame change here, or I guess position change, right, with his arms, that they literally just change immediately like this. I don't mind it too much because you're kind of focused on the ki anyway and you don't really see it as much. But then, right, even though there is a definite, like, this is very awkward if you notice it, even though it is quite masked by the ki, right? You can see even Vegeta's expression change a little bit, like he's a little bit more serious here. And then you can see here just the edge of a smirk when he changes here, right? You can see that little smirk and expression. But this angle is so cool. I really like the perspective on this, where obviously you're closer to Vegeta's hands, so the rest of him looks farther away. I almost wish that the ki wasn't here for a couple frames, even though I love the way that it looks. So just so we can get a better look at this Vegeta, because this Vegeta looks really sick. Yeah, so then we have it zoom back a little bit, and he actually fires off the blast. Look at these fantastic impact frames, bro. Oh, it's so good. And then we have him backed up basically with this amazing blast effect of him shooting the energy out of his hands. Oh my gosh. Oh, so good, dude. I love the background as well on this. So nice. And again, this is extremely accurate to the original source material here. It's kind of hard to go through this because obviously, since I don't have, like, you know, this immediately matched up to, you know, the essay, like, right next to it, essentially, it is a little bit harder to get the exact frames. But, Goku firing off a Kamehameha here. I also don't want to get copyright claim. That's the other thing that's so hard about this. Piccolo doing the... Okay, no, here. Vegeta should be right here? Please? Vegeta? There we go. It is interesting that his armor is broken here, but on the actual animation it isn't, which is interesting. They could have definitely done that for the active skill, but then maybe they would consider it a costume change. I don't know. Anyway, though, yeah. Even the way that the ki flows is super accurate to the source material here, right? Like, even those impact frames we just saw in the angle, right? Literally this. Like, they did such a good job getting this original material in here. We have Trunks as well. His key effects look super nice. Love the impact frames on that as well. Looks great. Again, you know, very accurate to what we see here in the anime, right? With the way the key is formed, right? The angle looks really good. By the way, the coloring is different on this because obviously this is like the newer version of this OVA. If you're unfamiliar with the Hachiyak stuff, there's like the super mega old OVA from the original Famicom game, and then they kind of like remade it. And this is like the remake version of it, so that's why the coloring is a little bit different. But then we have Piccolo fire off his blast here, which also looks really good. I definitely like this sort of angle too. I feel like there could be a little bit more frames in between here for sure, right? In the way that like he brings his arm down. But overall, I quite like this. And again, I really like the angle that this begins to take. It kind of looks like he's extending his arm, but obviously that's not what's happening here. Impact frames, again, fantastic, and the actual key blast looks so good. And you can actually tell that even though everything is like super colored blue here, this is the Bokanko Sapo, because of course you have these little extra bits outside of the blast, which is cool. Gohan's face does a little bit weird here, if I'm being honest with you, but I do quite like this. Obviously, Gohan raising his arms up, bringing his hands down. I do kind of wish the key matched his hands a little bit here. It's kind of weird that like his hands move here and then here, but the key stays in place. That's just a little bit janky. But obviously then it moves forward and him blasting it looks really, really good. Again, this is extremely accurate to the original source. Again, keep in mind colors are a little bit of a different scenario here, but yeah, literally looks like the original, right? Maybe the only difference here is that obviously the angle like is a little bit different, and the angle that Gohan starts in, I guess you would say, right? Even Piccolo's looks, you know, exactly like how it looks. The angle that he starts in like this is definitely a little bit different for the beginning section here. Let's go back to that right there, right? Maybe that's what they were trying to emulate with that shot there, but obviously he kind of stays in the same... Oh, no, I guess he does change because the sweep of the arm sort of changes his expression. I mean, he does change there, but that's kind of what they're trying to go for. Because obviously here, then, you know, it changes. It's so hard to see, but no, I guess they pretty much got it. Yeah, no, okay, I'll give it to him on that one for sure. And then, of course, we have Goku firing off the Kamehameha, and this, oh my gosh, this looks so good, dude. Oh, all of the Z fighters firing off their attacks, merging into one. Oh, and then the blast looks so good in the finisher. Obviously, this blue light looks very anime-esque, and also captures that sort of old VHS feel with the background, which looks really good. Firing off into the enemy. And this shot, too. Oh, man, it's so good, dude. I'm always so impressed, even more so with stuff like this, because this looks like something that you could only do in the anime, and to think that this is just PNGs is so crazy to me. The lighting effects look good on this, the way that it lights the cave, the background, the way that it moves just looks so good, right? And then obviously crashing into the enemy, this little lighting effect looks really, really nice. The explosion impact frame, also really cool. Then it transitions with a quick impact frame, which is a nice way to transition right into the enemy flying away. You have this little section where it's sort of like the key is flowing. Like this is almost like if you're inside of the blast, right? As the enemy is getting blown back, enveloped in it. And of course, with the ending, we have a little bit more of it and it fades to white. Very, very nice. This active skill is so good, dude. It's so nice. And even though this section here too, because obviously we didn't comment on, where are we? Here, right? Too much. Even though this is literally just the PNG of Goku sitting here, right? This is a bit of a weird cut, I will say, where it's just the ball and then the Kamehameha, but I mean, I guess it is quick, so it kind of works, right? You do have the Z Fighters basically just as PNG standing there, right? As their attacks sort of fly forward, but they're so far away that I don't really think you need a lot of minimal movement on this. And all of these key blasts look so good, especially the way that they all come together into one. Like this literally looks like it's crashing into one and then sort of like swirling and morphing, I guess would be the best way to put it, into one blast, right? Which is just so cool, right? And the transition here is fantastic. Going from this thing where you're facing the Z Fighters to this merging, and then you sort of wrap around to the Key Blast to then have it fly up to the sky. So good, dude. Oh my gosh. They nailed it with this active skill. So, that is everything that we have for this unit. I know this video still wasn't short because it was still 40 minutes long, but these animations were quite interesting to take a look at, absolutely. By the way, I will leave a link to that video that I was looking at the original animation for this in the description, of course. But it's just so interesting to me that the animations for the 12 key and the 18 key are just so lackluster. Like, it's weird. Genuinely, I think that these essays may be some of the worst of the year, but the active skill may be up there with the best of the year, which is just so weird that that is a part of the same unit, right? And again, some of it is definitely due to Hachiak's janky animation in the first place. But you can see, especially with the active skill, they absolutely nailed it with what they worked with. And I still think that this is a fairly good representation of this scene overall. I still think that it is a pretty cool LR. It is just very interesting to me that not only is this a 2022, almost 2023 LR, and they only have super attacks and an active skill, which I don't mind. I definitely don't mind simplistic LRs like this, right? And again, this is the Christmas LR, which is kind of funny. The TFS did the Christmas version of Eradicate the Saints, and it's the Christmas LR. I'm sure that's just coincidence, but it is quite funny. But the fact that this is supposed to be a Carnival LR that is on the same level as the LRs that we got for Worldwide, like, it's a bit of a weird comparison because I don't know if that's exactly fair to say considering those were worldwide units. But as unfortunate as it is for Dokkan in this case, those units set the standard, the bottom line, frankly, for what these Carnival LRs should be looking like. And I think that with the essays for these guys, they definitely are not up to snuff. The active skill, absolutely. But I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is definitely a bit of a weird one for me. I'm very mixed on how I feel about these guys for sure. So I would love to hear what you guys think. Always love hearing your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. Definitely going to be interested to see what we get as the New Year's units, if this is going to be the Christmas units. I think those will basically be the last units introduced for the year for Dokkan, and then it will be time for the top 5 best and worst of the year animation units, which I will be doing this year, so look forward to that. But without any further ado, I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.